There is a two-part Netflix series called Can I Tell You a Secret? And the series is about a cyberstalker who was harassing women in the UK. He would go as far as to impersonating the victims, their friends and their families, and this spanned over a decade. Spoiler alert, the perpetrator was a 30-year-old man named Matthew James Hardy, and he would be sentenced to 8 years in prison for his offences. His crime spanned over 11 years, had 10 arrests, and there was over 60 victims. He is officially known as UK's worst cyberstalker. So let's get into the case. His childhood is said to have been a lonely one. Due to his autism and Asperger's, he kept mostly to himself, never really speaking to anyone. He would be bullied at school by his classmates. In 2006, Facebook would arrive and it was a huge hit with the kids at his school and surrounding ones. Matthew began his online campaign of terror around 2009. Harassing as many as 25 girls from his school. He quickly became undone when they did a reverse number search and discovered it was him. When he would message the girls would reply back, "We know it's you, Matthew Hardy. Go away." This did little to curb his enthusiasm for his cyberstalking activities. In 2011, he would stalk a 16-year-old girl from his school, calling 50 times a day, watching her while she worked at a job and messaging her about the clothes she was wearing. The 16-year-old would go to the police, but the police did nothing. All they did was tell her to delete her Facebook account and block the numbers. It wouldn't be until he hacked the Facebook account of another female classmate impersonating her online, which would land Matthew in legal hot water. He had been using her account to send strangers dirty messages on Facebook, and this resulted with the young girl even being approached by the member of the public. Pretty terrifying. For this, Matthew would receive a suspended prison sentence and 250 hours of community service. Again, this would not stifle his online activities. In 2013, he set up profiles impersonating yet another female classmate, making her feel like she was unraveling. She would leave the house wearing a hat, trying to disguise herself, and she would even blame one of her co-workers. After speaking with her former classmates who told her it was more than likely Matthew Hardy, she would go to the police, and the police would yet again charge him, and yet again he would be given a suspended sentence, but this time he was handed a restraining order. A year later in 2014, he started up again, breaching the restraining order by messaging her. She would go to the police and nothing would happen. He breached the restraining order in 2014, 2015 and 2017. He gave 2016 a miss because he was arrested and given an interview under caution, but the top brass at the Bobby's shop decided not to pursue the case. But not all bad came out of this. The victim's name was Gina Martin, and Gina Martin would be responsible for changing the laws of upskirting in the UK. As the story goes, in 2017, Gina was the victim of an upskirting incident at a music festival in London. Basically, a man would take a picture using his phone up her skirt. She would report it to the police only to be told it wasn't illegal. Because of the bullshit she had endured with the police over Matthew Hardy's stalking, she was having none of it and pushed the laws to be changed, which they were in 2019. So that was thanks to Gina Martin. 3 of the women, including Gina Martin, would be stalked periodically by Matthew for over 10 years. One woman escaped only when she was married in 2016, changing her last name and limiting her social media use, preventing Matthew from finding her. One of the main things to point out about Matthew James Hardy is the fact he was unemployed. He would go through 3 main phases of stalking. First, it was girls he was close to, ones he went to school with. Secondly, it was girls in the surrounding area. And thirdly, it was pushed out even more widespread to women that had zero connections to him. Women that were living in different parts of the UK. In 2018, he started targeting women who were social media influencers. One of those women was Zoe Jade Hallam, who was contacted via Snapchat. He would start the conversation lightly with an intriguing question. Can I tell you a secret? It would escalate to him striking fear into these victims, making phone calls where he would sit silently on the other end. When the women would start crying, he would send taunting messages later on, saying crying like a baby. He would send threatening messages. Guess who I managed to speak to? About 50 people. Even some of your family's fellas. Bet you're asked now. In one disturbing incident, he impersonated Miss Hallam's boyfriend's father and started inappropriately messaging teenage girls. His boyfriend's dad was a local doctor, and it would damage his career. In 2019, he started harassing a 22-year-old woman named Abby Furness. He sent inappropriate sexual messages to her work colleagues. He destroyed her relationship with her boyfriend by pretending to be concerned women on Instagram who had witnessed Abby cheating on him with a security guard at a nightclub. The same boyfriend would be duped into sending Matthew Abby's intimate photos after he impersonated her, which she sent on to her boss. Over the course of the cyber harassment, Abby would not only lose her relationship with her boyfriend, but she would lose many close friendships as well. She would develop anxiety and depression. One of the most disturbing things is that Zoe Hallam would give the police Matthew's mobile number, but they refused to trace it and said that they could only do it for high-profile cases that involved the R word and murder. So basically, until that happens to you, you're on your own. Zoe's family at this point had seriously had enough, so they hired a private investigator themselves who tracked down Matthew Hardy. Armed with his info, she returned to the police, and the police paid James Hardy a visit, and he stopped for good, never to be heard from again. He stopped for about 2 months before resuming his campaign of terror on the young women again. Throughout this entire story, it's pretty apparent that the police just don't take cyberstalking cases very seriously, constantly telling victims to delete their social media accounts, block the phone numbers, etc. And unfortunately, throughout all the years I've been covering individuals like this, it's usually up to the victims to actually do something about it themselves. One cyberstalker I covered, Dinesh John the Shervin, has actually made a career out of cyberstalking people on TikTok. He's amassed over 1 million followers who view in each day to watch his cyberstalking antics. He classes it as research. He's being sued as we speak. Check out my TikTok Predator playlist for more information on that. So one officer in 2020 would take notice, and that was Kevin Anderson. He was a 22-year-old veteran assigned to the police department in the same hometown as Matthew James Hardy. Now, Matthew would be arrested in February of that year, but he would flat out deny everything. Wasn't me, didn't do nothing. I'm only being accused because there was a news article written about me 10 years ago. He would be charged a little over a year later, but even after that, he still continued cyberstalking these women. Like, he didn't give up on it. He continued to do it even after being charged again. I think because he'd just been let off so many times. And in the Netflix series, that's what the police officer basically said. We believe if he gets off, he's just going to continue doing it again, because this was the same pattern that Matthew James Hardy had been doing for over a decade at this point. He would get charged, he would get released, and he'd continue doing it. The police would witness him buying a new phone the second he left the station, and sure enough, he was contacting the victims yet again. This was after he denied everything. Like, he's gone and done it again. He denied everything, then he went and bought a phone, and then he went and did it again. This was like before he was charged. So this was back in 2020. It wasn't 2021. Probably should have said that earlier. Probably the funniest part about this is he would actually slip up when he was on one of the accounts he was impersonating a victim, and he accidentally filmed himself. Now, here's a screenshot of that. Fuck, he looks like a creep. The evidence would be handed over to the police and added to the case against him. In October of 2021, he would plead guilty and give a huge song and dance about how he was autistic and that he didn't know what he was doing, and yada yada. It was quickly refuted due to the fact that he was taunting all of these victims. So they knew full well his pleads of, I'm just a wee handy-capable person who doesn't know what he's doing and I'm a loner, was just garbage, because he'd been taunting these victims. He knew full well what he was doing to them. You know, this whole claiming, I've got poor social skills, so this is the only way I can communicate, didn't fly with them at all. In January 2022, he would be sentenced to 9 years in jail, but on appeal, it would be reduced to 8 years. Unfortunately, cyberstalking is far too common, and it's had a significant rise since the lockdowns of 2020. From all the years I covered it, the one common thread that I noticed between all of these people is the fact that they didn't have jobs. A lot of them didn't work. They had too much free time on their hands. They didn't have a purpose in life, so this is the sort of shit they did, coupled with the fact that a lot of them had mental health issues. They aren't leaving the house and socializing like normal people do. Instead, they are choosing to sit on social media all day and all night, trolling people and reporting their videos, basically doing this to complete strangers who they feel like they know because they may have interacted with them in the comments section or they've seen their social media video posts. So they actually think they know these people. So they just harass them and make slanderous accusations against them. This is all the shit that's happening on TikTok. Matthew Hardy is nothing special. I've unfortunately seen many people just like him on social media. In a very disturbing incident, Dinesh John the Shervin, who is a prolific online cyberstalker, who is currently being sued, he would post this video about the plaintiffs.
I have an update on my children's stalker. They had their lawyer reach out and ask that I do not pursue a case against them. And if I were willing to agree to that, they would drop this ridiculous made-up case they made about me in an effort to get ahead of the case I have against them. They said they'd be willing to drop that. And admittedly, that would save me a lot of money, but
everything this man is saying is a bold-faced lie, and the reason why I'm inserting him into this is because this is a very dangerous person. Someone who will make slanderous accusations about his children being stalked, which he's shown absolutely no proof because it never happened. Then he's backed that up by claiming that Patrick Traynor, the lawyer in this case for the plaintiffs, has reached out to him trying to make some sort of deal, again showing absolutely no proof of this. He's just doing this because he's trying to make himself look like he's in a superior position, he's in the right, and the full intention here is to try and bring some sort of violent action towards the plaintiffs. He's making false allegations against them about stalking his children. He's shown no proof. This is what he does a lot. He never shows any proof. Now, if you thought that was stupid, which you'd be right to think that, the fact that he is making false allegations against plaintiffs in a lawsuit against him to incite violence against them, it actually did happen. Here's a video that I have of a man who showed up to Jennifer Couture. She's one of the plaintiffs against Dinesh. He showed up to intimidate her. This man was trying to intimidate the plaintiff in a case against Dinesh. And this is all due to the fact that he is posting slanderous information online about them, and he's not showing any proof because the proof doesn't exist. The plaintiffs in the case against Dinesh were able to track this person down through their lawyer. It turned out to be a man who had stalking charges against women dating as far back as like 2013 or 2014. There were quite a few of those charges, and going off memory, I do believe there was 3 or 4 women that this person had been stalking. But the scary part about this is the fact that Dinesh has incited this man through his videos. Dinesh lives in Mansfield, PA. This is in Florida. So this man lives in Florida. He's seen Dinesh's videos. Dinesh is going around telling everybody his children are at risk. They're being stalked. He's getting 3 PDO messages and all sorts of stuff that he has not shown an ounce of proof for. On a side note, and this was mentioned in the Netflix series, is that only 0.1% of cyberstalkers are ever convicted. And if they are jailed, on average, it's only for about 13 months. So it's clear to me that the authorities don't really take this shit very seriously. One thing I also wanted to note, at the end of the Netflix series, they wrote this: "Since Hardy's period of offending, we have better systems, improved training, and better technology. We are one of just few police forces with a dedicated stalking unit. However, this is not an issue police can tackle alone. Social media companies also need to take more responsibility to help prevent offences of this nature." This is so spot on. And social media companies need to stop hiding behind Section 230. Section 230, in a nutshell, it basically enables the companies to remove offending posts without being prosecuted or fined or dragged through lawsuits. Now, social media platforms are actually hiding behind Section 230 to allow cyberstalkers to still remain on the app. Now, we are seeing time and time again these online predators getting away with psychologically terrorizing their victims online. And it's high time these private companies, because these social media platforms are private companies, it is really high time that these social media privately owned companies do something about it. Social media is not a right, it's a privilege. And if you abuse that privilege, you should be banned for life. Now, the social media platforms themselves, they have that ability. They can punch through VPNs and find the source IP address. They have the ability to do that, but yet they're still not doing it. They need to remove these abusive predators off social media, because at the end of the day, they will save lives by doing that. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one.